What can we do for you? What does Watch Duty need?
Computers are cheap to operate, but rebuilding 12,000 homes and restoring lives that are lost is just not possible. I think the best thing to do is give money to direct relief efforts like directrelief.org and others who are on the ground helping.
This is why I love you. I ask you, how do we help you? And you ask us to give to other people. I mean,
that's what I do, right?
When the wildfires erupted in Los Angeles on January 7th, 2025, people were frantic. We didn't know where to get information. We didn't know if or when we had to evacuate. At the beginning, we got information through sort of an informal whisper network. Did you hear? We'd say to each other. Then we found Watch Duty. This one magical, elegant app told us everything we needed to know. And it was up to date, and it was accurate. And we all had it. We checked it constantly. It was a lifeline, literally. Evacuation orders, fire perimeters, and wind directions, all of it faster and clearer than any government site or news outlet. And we owe it all to tech entrepreneur John Mills. John coded Watch Duty himself to help his community after a series of deadly fires came close to destroying his own home in Northern California. Today, the app serves millions of people. It operates in multiple states and relies on scores of trained volunteers who gather data from radio scanners and other sources to get the information out. The app has skyrocketed in popularity, and John has no intention of selling it, because the value, as he explains it, is bigger than any paycheck. We live in a world where too many put themselves before others. So how can we be more like John Mills? How can we inspire more people to serve those who serve others? I think John may have the answer. This is a bit of optimism. John, thank you so much for doing this. I know that your life has been extremely busy. How did you find yourself in this position where all of us in Los Angeles were glued to your app more than anything else? Why you, and how do you find yourself here now?
Why me? Well, they said that luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness, and I have the unique opportunity to be able to do this with my life and dedicate my life to this work. And I've been through a couple of pretty close calls here on my ranch. Fires come very close to me. One was a 50,000 acre fire that ended about a quarter mile from my property. Another one was a quarter mile away in the other direction. That was another fire that I wasn't alerted about. The helicopters are how I knew there was a fire, not because anybody told me. And so
the world is burning outside of your home, and you find out about it because you see a fire helicopter fly over you.
Yeah, that's how you get alerted.
That's a good motivation to try and want to do something.
Sure, why not?
At least, okay, but hold on. That's a motivation for a lot of people to complain. That's a motivation for a lot of people to get angry. That's a motivation for a lot of people to yell at their mayor or congressman or whoever. You then went and built an app to give yourself the information you needed.
I don't know, it felt like it was more fun, you know?
You're an engineer, right?
I'm an engineer and a product person, yes.
I'm trying to understand how you found yourself in this situation. Isn't this what the authorities, what the governments, what the local government's supposed to provide? Aren't they supposed to provide us the information we need to stay safe and know what's going on?
You would think
That's
so.
what I mean by why you. Like it shouldn't have to be you.
That is correct. My friends are joking. I just had an article about me in the Hollywood Reporter, and I said I'm building this out of spite. And they sent me the episode of Larry David who makes the Spite store. So Spite is the coffee guy next door. Spite's a powerful motivator. I mean, really, I do it out of love, but also just out of disdain for this lack of good technology in the government, right? They still call it IT, right? It's kind of like a derogatory term, like the guy who fixes your printer. You know what I mean? Rather than actual serious infrastructure that has held up the internet or held up cell towers. Like, this is critical infrastructure that must exist. And so I just knew they weren't going to do it. And I could just complain on the internet, but that would have been boring.
And I think people have to understand that the LA fires this is not your first rodeo. Like, Watch Duty is already dare I say, an essential app in a lot of other places. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, we started in just Lake Sonoma, Napa counties, where I live in Sonoma. About 2021 is when I first launched it. And since then, I mean, I'm in 1 in every 2 or 3 phones in most counties in Northern California already who experience fire, right? We have mass adoption throughout these areas. There's been some pretty fast moving wind-driven fires that everybody knows. And unfortunately, we didn't have enough adoption in LA until now.
Why does yours work? I mean, putting the tech aside that the tech works, why does it work? Because you're basically consolidating information that comes from a lot of other places that is fairly accurate and fairly up to date.
That's actually the easy part, right? So as a technologist, the challenge isn't to go and just scrape all these government websites and to make a beautiful product and package, etc. Like, people know how to do that, right? Like, Silicon Valley is very good at getting your attention and keeping it, making sure you doom scroll endlessly and then buy a bunch of random stuff that you don't need, right? Like, it's very good at that. But the magic is actually in the people. And what I mean by the people are these radio operators and reporters who are listening to fire scanners constantly. So those folks in real time are hearing everything and disseminating that information across the application via push notifications. So that news feed is coming from human beings who are spending their days and nights hearing the fire ground. And that's what the magic actually is. There's nothing else to it. Anyone could have done what I did. The hard part was to find these people who were just bound by their own like sheer will and the desire to help people. And so that was the really key insight here. That's the data that's missing.
So it begs 2 questions. A, tech is obsessed with AI, and AI seems to be the answer to absolutely everything. And yet you chose to go human. Why human and not automation?
Well, in my opinion, AI is unable to do this job right now. It's just not there yet. That might be a reality in the future, but we do use some AI, and we use that to help do signal to noise processing, right? So we do have a lot of AI that are scraping and scanning government websites that are trying to interpret random things, and they feed that information into Slack where the human beings are able to see it and interpret it. So to answer your question shortly, I don't think it's ready yet. And then finally, like, even if it was ready, I would be concerned about mistakes being made. And I just don't like that idea right now. It's life and safety. You know, this isn't like a silly chatbot helping you write a paper or something, right? This is like, do I run east or west when I leave my house or not? It's a little bit too dangerous, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's a little bit like autopilot, right? Which is, I think every single one of us is fine with computers helping pilots fly the plane. But at the end of the day, we like the idea that there's 2 pilots sitting there evaluating the automation. I think we trust people sometimes more than we trust computers, which I think is a good thing. And then how, again, playing off the Silicon Valley very much is about a business model, an IPO, giving everybody equity, to get people to work hard, to get to that quote-unquote liquidity event that everybody's obsessed with. And yet you are a not-for-profit who the people who work with you so hard are volunteers. What was it about starting a not-for-profit and versus the traditional Silicon Valley route? And then how did you get the people to sign up?
So we do have some paid staff, obviously, like any nonprofit does. We had 0 for the first 18 months. It was just a bunch of volunteers. So let's start there, right? So these radio operators were already doing this job on Facebook and Twitter, right? The first really big mega fire was the Valley Fire, I think 2015 or so. And then we had the Tubbs in 2017, and Paradise was either 18 or 19, I believe. And so we've had these series of events that have driven these radio reporters to start putting this information out on Facebook and Twitter. And they were doing this for free. Right, some had,
just concerned citizens.
Correct. And again, some were ex and active retired firefighters and all different types of people. It's kind of all over the board. So they were already doing a nonprofit, right? Like, some of them had Ko-Fi links to buy them, $5 cup of coffee, but they were doing this because it's a hobby, right? Like, why did Wikipedia do this for free, right? Like, why are there like Redditors who are like just avid geeks about keeping their subreddit community organized and clean? It's like, it's in their hearts to do this. And so taking that idea, like, of course they want to do a nonprofit. It's in their heart to do it that way. And so for me, like, on a very personal level, I understand why they do that. I feel their pain. This shouldn't be for sale. This can't stop, right? maybe one day the government will do it and we'll stop. A nonprofit's job should be to finish its job and delete itself. That would be ideal, right? The program finishes running and then it gets deleted. But unfortunately, we're in a growing industry, as my friends like to remind me.
What can we do for you? What does Watch Duty need? What do you need from us? How can we help? How do we support you?
Well, the community is supporting us. I mean, it's amazing to get, such amounts of funding in such a short period of time. And obviously donations are super important to keep our operation running. It's hard to ask because right now the relief efforts are going to take, almost a decade. I mean, we still have towns around me that have not been rebuilt. So part of it is challenging for me to ask for anything else rather than give money to direct relief, because Watch Duty is a capital efficient business. We will continue to operate and not stop. We are in the business of bits, not atoms, right? Computers are cheap to operate, but rebuilding 12,000 homes and restoring lives that are lost is just not possible. I think the best thing to do is give money to direct relief efforts like directrelief.org and others who are on the ground helping.
This is why I love you. I ask you, how do we help you? And you ask us to give to other people. I mean,
that's what I do, right?
John, seriously, man. You bring me to tears. You're going to
make me cry. I've had a fucking hard week, man.
You okay?
Exhausted. Yeah, I'll be all right.
Okay?
I've had a couple hard ones, but it's it'll be all right eventually.
What happened?
I mean, you just have some days you're just so proud of what you're doing, and then you're just in the shower fucking crying because people's running for their lives. It's tough because I'm looking out my window and behind me is my forest, and it's going to be overrun with fire again. And so it's not my turn right now, but it's going to be my turn again. So it's just the cycle of life. I'm just come to grips with it.
You know, one of the weirdest experiences I had in all of this is two incredibly weird things that happened to me. One was as the evacuation zones got closer to us, and we got very lucky. The wind changed direction, but they were creeping towards us, And even though they didn't reach us, we didn't get to yellow. We were one zone away from yellow. You start preparing, and I walked around my house, and I started saying thank you to my stuff. I went through this crazy gratitude, like. One of my favorite paintings in the world that I've owned for years, hanging on my wall. It's too big for me to put in a car. And I look at it and I said, thank you. Thank you so much for the joy. I'm going to cry. Right. I went through this crazy gratitude practice. And it was and it's whether the stuff survived or didn't. I didn't have fear that I was going to lose it. I got to say thank you. You hear this from people who lose loved ones, and they say, I'm glad I was by their side to say goodbye. They had cancer, we knew it was going to happen. I'm glad I was by their side. And there was some shit I didn't give a shit about. I walked around and I'm like, I don't care about that. I don't care how much it cost. I care nothing about that.
No, that's the time.
And there was some stuff that I was like, so that was one crazy experience. And I realized I don't need a lot of stuff, which was a beautiful thing to come to terms with. And the second thing, which is just a strange experience, which is watching your app, watching the winds. And I remember the winds changed direction, and I thought, God, thank you. I'm so grateful. And in the same moment, fully aware that somebody's watching the app going,
somewhere
oh
else.
No. And to have to reconcile that my good fortune is somebody else's ill fortune. And by the way, nobody wants their house to burn down to save somebody else's house. That doesn't exist. And just the paradox that there's no winners in this, that my happiness and relief and sigh is somebody else's increased blood pressure and fear. The world is unfair.
It is unfair, and that's what fire teaches you, man. It takes from everybody equally, and it's not fair. Yeah. I remember the first time I evacuated, I was gone for 8 days, I think, and like after 6 days, I was just like, just Fern already. I'm done. I'm just so stressed out. I'm up all night. There was no watch duty. I'm listening to radios. I'm just like, you know what, man? Just get it fucking over with. I was just done. I just really resigned. I resigned myself to the outcome. It was a strange feeling.
I hope the lessons are learned. And this is the shitty thing about people, right? Which is we forget. And I remember September 11th, I lived in New York during September 11th. And for weeks, dare I say months, but definitely weeks after September 11th. Yeah, I'll say months. New York was the most incredible city in the world. Crime disappeared. There was nothing. There was no crime.
Right.
Somebody who might have mugged me a week before was holding a door open for me.
Yep.
And there was this shared hardship, and we were there for each other. And you see it now in LA, the insane outpour of love. There's also idiots and looters and people who are raising the rents on their houses because they're assholes, you know, talking about ethics over money, you know.
Fucking horrible.
Like, nobody's saying you can't make money, but my goodness, like raising rents, you know, anyway. But we'll forget. And New York went back to being New York. And I remember being in the middle of it going, this is utopia, and it's going to go away because we forget. We forget. And this is my fear, which is the people who are now struck by this well of emotion. I'm going to devote my life to service. For how long? I hope forever. I hope forever, but for how long? You know?
This is why I like the disaster business, because I see the best in people. I have a couple friends in the industry before I got here, and I always wondered, I was like, how do you guys do this? My friend is Jose Andres, his right-hand man.
Sure.
He's the one who lost his employees in Gaza twice. I mean, like, his nickname is actually Doomsdaddy. I gave him that name. I mean, that guy has no pilot's license, has landed multiple planes. He's in fucking tornadoes, hurricanes. He lives it, and he feels more alive at the edge of death than anyone else I've ever met in my entire life. And he embodies this spirit, you know, and he sees the best in it. And now that I'm here, I understand why he does what he does, and I'm hooked. I'm an addict.
Yeah. And I see it. I've spent time, you know, I spent a lot of time with the military, with people who live these lives of service, who, as somebody said when, you know, he described a life in service as my get-rich-slow plan, you know. Like, everybody knows they're not doing it for the money, you know? Like, you know that when you sign up, and you don't have to be like your friend, the Doomsdaddy, to have that intensity. It's a shame that they call it disaster, right? Because the flip side of disaster is an inspiration and a joy and a fulfillment like you cannot experience anywhere else. There's no company, there's no liquidity event, there's no client you can win. There's no game that you can top that will recreate the feeling of service for those who need it more than you.
Very much agree. And that's what the firefighters do, man. But my heroes, I mean, these people, you know, are just, they're like no one else. Will do whatever is right at all costs. And I've seen them risk their careers and their lives for the betterment of the world, and they get paid jack shit. And they are just above and beyond anyone else I've ever worked for. So it is not a boring group of people to be around, and that's just my favorite.
I'm so enamored by who you are and what you stand for. I mean, you've had success as a technologist. You've had success in Silicon Valley. You've lived the movie life, the trope, you know, that a lot of technologists, you know, and startups go through. You've done it. I've met a lot of people who, as a result of selling their business or going public, or whatever it is, they've made generational wealth. And if you ask them, what do you do now? They say, I'm an investor. And I don't understand why people who've made generational wealth, their goal is to now make more money. And what I so appreciate about you is you've done that, you've made the money, and somebody says, what do you do? And you're a philanthropist. And you may invest, but you're a philanthropist that invests, not an investor that is a philanthropist. And I think that's really important. When I look at who you are and what you stand for, what goes through my mind is, first of all, thank you. I mean, I used your app, and it you know, I checked it like a teenager looking at TikTok, you know, and I'm grateful, but it's more the example of who you are and what you stand for that I think is even more important than the app, because there's a lot of other problems that need to be solved that good people who can afford to do it and do know how to do these things and or have already built a business and understand infrastructure and people and all of the things, even if they build it out of spite, like, we need more of you.
I mean, I'll take the compliment, thank you. And I agree. And part of it is like, I'm an operator, right? Through and through. So like, I can't just sit there and invest. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I need to build things. I want my hands on equipment, machinery. I had a choice. I could like go get a yacht.